Welcome back, everybody. My name is Ben Schubert, and today I want to talk about audio. Sound is very important, but not the sound of me drinking coffee. That is not anything anyone wants to hear. We all spend a lot of time on our videos for clients, for YouTube, for whatever, and we spend a lot of time on the video side, making sure the images are great, the lighting, the lenses, getting everything looking just great. But the thing that a lot of people don't work that hard on is sound, and sound is incredibly important. So today we're going to talk a bit about sound and mixing it, mostly for YouTube, but this really works for any online kind of system. If you're going to broadcast, you would just pay a professional sound mixer to do the work properly. But today we're going to talk about, those times where you can't do that, when you got to do it yourself and you need to make it sound clean and consistent. So I've been producing content for film and television and now the web since 2004. So like 16 years now? Dear God. Ugh. But I think in about 2004, 2005, I actually did an internship at an audio post house because I originally thought mixing audio for big films was really the thing that I was into. I really was into music and audio production, and I thought that's where I was gonna go. And then I found video, and that really opened up a lot of things for me. So here's some of the things I've picked up in the many years I've been doing video and audio and music production, so hopefully this is helpful. We're gonna start off by assuming you have good audio to begin with, in terms of like you're recording with a good mic at a good distance in a quiet space. So right now we're just in my office. The mic is really close to me, so it's getting good audio. I know my levels are good. The preamps I'm working with are excellent. So I'm not that worried about it. So I know my source audio is good, and that is the place you want to start from, because cleaning up bad audio is where things get messy. So right now we're going to assume you have good, reasonably clean audio to start with. So first and foremost, the main thing I look at when mixing my audio is my dialogue, because that is the thing that I want to hear the clearest. It is the thing that I want to make sure is dialed in the best. So I start there, and I want audio to be peaking around -6. So not every peak has to be at -6. Sometimes things will get quiet and that's fine. You work that out. Or sometimes things will get louder. So generally you want to keep your dialogue at about -6 dB. And we're going to use some other tools to clean it up more after that, but that is a good start. So if you're using Premiere, you can just press G and that'll open up your audio gain options. And you can add gain or take some out depending on what you need if you're wanting to really like boost the signal before you start doing keyframes in audio. So as for keyframes, I only really keyframe out things in my audio if it's a big, obnoxious sound. Like if there's a giant spike in the audio for some reason, then I'll bring it down or out or whatever needs to be done. But otherwise, I generally leave things pretty calm, or unless the audio is changing wildly, then I'll bring up parts, but otherwise I generally tend to leave it fairly flat. The next thing I do is I EQ my voice. So EQing is a really great way to kind of shape the sound and shape your voice and get the best out of whatever your voice has to offer, and to clean up things around it that maybe your recording just doesn't need. So for instance, there's parts on the low end you can shave off and parts on the high end you can shave off, leaving the main midsection where your dialogue really comes from. From there you can take a point and take the cue, make it really small. And what this does is it allows you to make a spike which you can run along your audio, and you can hear little ringing bits in your sound. And any of those ringing bits, those are parts of your space that are reverberating more than necessary. So what you can do is you want to find those pieces and then just bring them down, and then just a little bit expand the cue just to open up the space, the amount of area that you're actually taking out, and that'll clean up some of your audio that way. Sometimes, I know for my dialogue, I tend to like to add just a little bit in the bass end for my voice. This is something that I like to do, and it just adds a little bit more presence on the lower end of my voice and my dialogue. Next, I also have a preset that I've made that is a hard limiter set to -6. These are easy to make. You can do them in any program. And basically you just take a hard limiter, set it to -6, and then make a preset out of it that way. It's fairly simple. I'm sure there's other videos if it seems more complicated than I'm making it sound. So I'll take that hard limiter and I'll apply it to all my dialogue. And what that does is, because I've brought the dialogue up through my EQ and through just general gain, the limiter will keep my dialogue from going above -6 dB. That'll really help you bring up the quiet parts while reducing the louder parts of your dialogue, and essentially just like squishing it all to a place and making it a little bit more even. And so one last thing I like to do for my dialogue is I like to select all my dialogue clips and add 2 frames of crossfade to all of it. And so what that does is it goes to every clip and it just adds 2 frames of crossfade, so it goes up and down, and that takes out any kind of pops you get in your audio. You will have to go through after you do that and make sure that there's no sounds getting into your audio that you weren't expecting. So if you have 2 clips butted up together, sometimes, you know, a small amount of sound can carry through and that can add something jarring. So you want to make sure that you're not adding anything like that. Or you want to have your clips staggered, so it's always a crossfade out and a crossfade in, or vice versa, doesn't matter. Next is music. Music is generally fairly straightforward. Sometimes there's ups and downs that you want to keyframe around, but in general, while dialogue is happening, I like to keep music at -27 dB. And then when I'm out of dialogue and showing B-roll, I go up to -15. Now I don't go higher than that unless the music is generally pretty quiet, because it just becomes a really stark change if the music gets, you know, all the way up to 0 dB when nothing else has been that loud. Music doesn't necessarily need the same presence as dialogue, and it's good to have that buffer room because dialogue is really the thing that you want to have as the most present. And so to keep music just a little bit underneath is really helpful at keeping it sound really clean and really consistent. So for that, you can either keyframe between the parts you want to go louder or quieter, but generally something I like to do, which is really lazy, is I will just cut at the parts that I want it to come in and out, and I'll just do a crossfade between the 2 clips. That way if my cut changes and dialogue moves forward or backwards, it's really easy for me to just move that crossfade without having to like select every keyframe, which can get really annoying. Now, one last thing, this is something I do sometimes depending on the video. I actually do it more when I do Instagram stories, but if I'm doing a video that has only like a little bit of dialogue and is mostly music, one thing that I'll do is I won't bring the music down that much more than -15, like maybe I'll do -20. What I'll do is I'll add an EQ to the music and bring down the areas where my voice is most present, and that essentially like just brings down the audio in that space, so it just makes room for your audio while you're talking. Sometimes this is really good for a spot where you want the music louder, but you also want to have just like a little bit of dialogue come in and out in places during that music. You can just have a little audio dip in the EQ instead of having a dip in the volume, which is actually something that a lot of professional sound studios do when they do their dialogue and music mix anyways. So there you go. So those are some of the techniques I use for cleaning up audio, and I used all of them in this video for sure. If you found this video helpful, give it a thumbs up. If you have any other tips about audio that you want to share for other people, put those down in the comments. That's where they go. And otherwise, follow along and I'll talk to you later. All right, see ya.